Today, I have Ellen Maynes, who leads the IFC's Gender and Inclusion Program in the Pacific. Ellen has over 25 years' experience designing and delivering impactful solutions across development and private sectors, including in fragile contexts such as Myanmar, Papua New Guinea, and the Solomon Islands. Ellen supports companies to strengthen inclusion through meaningful and practical action. Today, Ellen is here to speak about the Meri Save Trades program, which in Papua New Guinea, also PNG, that is helping private sector create more and better jobs for women. The program addresses the underrepresentation of women in these well-paid trades and is crucial for economic development. 18 major companies in PNG are taking part in this program between partnership between IFC and the PNG Business Coalition for Women. The program equips firms with the know-how to strengthen recruitment, promotion, retention of women in technical and trade positions and to build safe and respectful work environments. Welcome, Ellen, to the Women in Unconventional Jobs series, where we speak about, some of, what are different organizations and programs across the world doing to break these gender barriers in what are traditionally considered male-dominated fields. So welcome, Ellen. Could you share a little bit about this program?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to share about this program. And thanks for the warm introduction as well. So Meri Save Trades in Tok Pisin means Women Know Trades. And this program is a program, women's employment program in Papua New Guinea to support women's employment in these trade sectors. The program is supported by Australia and it's in partnership with the Business Coalition for Women in Papua New Guinea. So maybe a bit of background about Papua New Guinea. It's a Pacific island country. It's very beautiful, but it's also an FCS country. So we have climate and conflict fragility. We also have incredible biodiversity. We have over 800 different ethnic groups and languages. So incredible country overall with a lot of diversity, but also a country where there is a lot of gender inequality and women face a lot of challenges with accessing things like education and health, but also having the economic opportunities that men have. At the moment, they're underrepresented in the economy, also in community leadership and in politics as well. And that's reflected in the Gender Inequality Index, where PNG ranks 151st out of 166 countries. So there is some room for improvement. So why did we decide to do this program? Well, when we look at Papua New Guinea, only 31% of the total population employed are women, and we know that the country's GDP could be 20% higher if that gender gap was closed. So it's really a significant opportunity, not just because it's the right thing to close the gender gap, but it actually makes good economic sense as well. We spoke to a lot of companies in PNG when we were setting up this program, and they told us that they were having a lot of difficulty with recruiting and retaining skilled workers, and they'd also like to hire more women in their workplaces. We also know at the same time that the profile of companies in PNG is kind of male-dominated. The extractives and construction industries account for about a quarter of PNG's GDP, and women are having a lot of trouble getting into those higher paid jobs in those sectors like construction and extractives. Some of the things that they encounter in trying to access these jobs are hostile work environments, concerns around safety, some of the traditional cultural expectations about the types of jobs that might be acceptable for women, and some other legislative restrictions as well. We know that there are a lot of benefits from having inclusion, innovation, we know productivity, reduce risk, and also just this better recruitment and retention. So when we put this project forward for approval, everyone agreed it was going to be the right thing to do for Papua New Guinea and the right thing to do for businesses and also for women themselves. So what is Meri Save Trades? Well, it's a program which aims to strengthen women's recruitment and retention in PNG companies. Under the program, companies make a commitment to addressing 2 of the following 5 areas within their company. The first is to enhance opportunities for women in leadership because women are not progressing into those top levels in companies. The second is to recruit and retain women in trades and non-traditional jobs, to build a safe and respectful workplace, to promote a healthy and family-friendly workplace, and last but certainly not least is to demonstrate leadership from the top by raising awareness of gender equality. So what does the program involve for the companies who are participating? Well, firstly, once the companies agreed to be a part of the program, they nominated 2 focal points each. Usually that's someone from HR or maybe from the health and safety team. And those focal points represent the company by participating in training and learning opportunities through different types of webinars, face-to-face workshops. And those workshops are very much based on those 5 commitment areas. So there's sort of technical learning, but also peer learning. What's really powerful about this program, Apurva, is they're actually learning off each other as they go through the program. You already mentioned there's 18 companies, and there's a lot of power in them learning from each other's lessons and sometimes mistakes, right? The companies receive support from us and from our program partner so that they can better understand how they can take action to recruit, retain and promote women in technical and trades. And they also, as part of the program, develop an action plan, which we help them to deliver over an 18-month period. What's also really important about the program is that we help them to measure the impact, not just, how many workshops are being attended, but real impact. How many women employed in these businesses are these actions benefiting? What do we see in terms of promotions? What do we see in terms of changed attitudes? So that part of it is really important, and we're really excited to already be seeing some changes as the program goes on. So 18 firms are part of the program. They represent some really tough sectors in many ways, and perhaps sectors that don't normally are not normally considered to be organisations that hire a lot of women, particularly in PNG. So we have transport, construction, manufacturing, waste, extractives, and these companies have already drafted their action plans to close the gaps in their organisations. We've had already 12 workshops and events, and this is a mix of skill-based workshops, which includes things like masterclasses to help those focal points strengthen their leadership and communications ability to drive their action plan in their workplace. We also have one-on-one mentoring for the focal points, topic-based learning with guest speakers, and also through the community of practice. But we're really excited to already see so far that we've had 2 focal points that have been promoted within their organisations, one as a director and one as a country manager, respectively. So I might stop there. I've given you quite a background, Apurva, and see what else you might want to talk about.
Everybody got a snapshot about what this program is like. So can you share a little bit about, what are the barriers faced by women in, considering these professions, and let alone, joining them, growing in them, thriving in them? Like, what are the barriers do you see facing from the industry themselves, and maybe if there are any socio-emotional, cultural, other type of barriers that restrict them? And the second part of the question I have is from the private sector perspective themselves. What is the pushback that you receive while running, while when you're having these conversations, when having this dialogue and workshops and all of that? What are the hard questions that are being asked?
Yeah, sure, no problem. So in terms of the challenges faced by the women themselves, I'd say one of the hardest barriers is around cultural norms. Women are expected to do, the burden of the household responsibility, like childcare. And in terms of what is seen as to be an attractive job for women, often that's more like a job in an office or a bank or something like that. So this is something that is not well accepted necessarily, that women might want to work in a trades or a more industrial role. We also recently did a study in PNG looking at childcare and the cost of the lack of childcare for businesses. And due to that lack of childcare support for working parents, companies are losing more than 12 working days per year per employee as a result of these challenges. So this is certainly a barrier, these cultural norms and also care responsibilities. I'd say the other thing, though, that's really a really challenging issue in PNG is around gender-based violence. There's a really high rate of gender-based violence. The statistics vary, but we see up to sort of 3 in 4 women impacted by family and sexual violence. And this affects their ability to be able to turn up to work, to be on time, to continue on and be productive and flourish in their job. But we also see that coming out, that culture of violence in the workplace in terms of issues like sexual harassment, bullying, and just hostility in the workplace. So this can be something is really off-putting for women and makes them not feel inclined to either go into the sector in the first place or stay there. They might find themselves dropping out of a job. The third thing I think in terms of what's challenging for women is the legislatory and the regulation environment in PNG. At the moment, the Employment Act does not provide support for paid maternity leave. So if a woman has a baby, there's no mandated maternity leave. There also is within the Mining Act restrictions on women working underground, for example. So there is some reform that is required to support the industry, support women to flourish in the industry. And then the other part of your question was more around the business side. So what we've found in terms of businesses and what's been challenging for them is we've obviously had a huge response from companies who want to be a part of the program. So 18 companies put their hand up and said, yes, please, we want to be a part of the program. So they understood the business benefit of hiring and retaining women in their organisation. But that doesn't mean we haven't had some challenges along the way. One of them has been around data collection, actually. And that is that as part of the program I mentioned, we really want to be able to track the impact. Is it working? What are we achieving? But unfortunately, in a lot of organisations in Papua New Guinea, their HR systems aren't very sophisticated. So it's really difficult to extract data and capture, a baseline and an end line so that you can actually measure the change. The other thing I think we're seeing is companies are really open to hiring women. However, they're not making the necessary workplace adjustments for women. So they're not considering women to be so different from men. An example of that would be pregnancy, right? So in these sites, you often have, the PPE or the protective equipment that women and men are required to wear on site. When a woman is pregnant, she might need to upgrade and get a larger size of PPE. Or perhaps she needs to have some restrictions while she's pregnant to avoid areas where she might have exposure to chemicals or something like that. What we're seeing is that companies haven't maybe thought through some of those adjustments that need to happen in order to support women. And then I think the third thing is that I mentioned earlier the companies were nominating focal points to represent their company and drive the action plan in the company. Well, the company themselves have nominated the smartest and brightest people in their organisations to play this function. But that's challenging because those people can be a bit overloaded. They have a lot of other commitments. So it's really challenging to keep this one a priority and provide them with the support they need to get the job done as well as do the regular day-to-day work. So I'd say that that's been a little bit of a challenge as well.
That's totally understandable, because we ourselves are overwhelmed with work, but when you add these additional layers of what they might or might not be incentivized for. But I think you have given a very interesting perspective, especially about the legal. We did another interview with the women business and the law team, and they spoke about the legal law, the legal infrastructure in Azerbaijan and how they managed to open up the sector for more women to join the mining sector, railways, so on and so forth. So if folks are interested, please check out the other podcasts. And, Ellen, with respect to the private sector, thank you for sharing these very real barriers. There are other TTLs or team leads in the World Bank and IFC designing such programs, right? what would your advice be to them, team lead to team lead, in terms of working, especially with the private sector, to kind of sustain these programs, keep in consideration all these barriers, so that these policies and some of these finer behavioral changes are ingrained even after probably the program is complete.
Yeah, thank you. And that's certainly our intention, is that we want to be able to leave behind the impact from this program to really continue over the years. I think the first tip I'd have for other TTLs is it's really important to equip the focal points themselves with the skills that they might need to create and influence change in their organisation. So it's one thing to provide technical support on how do you implement, a respectful workplaces policy, but how do you actually influence your CEO, your board, how to actually take on these changes in the workplace. So actually what we've done is we stepped back a bit and we did some master classes with the focal points. And as part of those, we worked through some of these challenges, and we did role plays, and the focal points were practicing, for example, how to pitch their gender action plan to the board. And I know it's working, Poover, because I got a call from my HR manager the following week, and she said, I've already pitched my idea for a child-friendly space to the CFO, and now it's going to the board. So this little switch up that we did, this little tweak to our program to just think about some of those extra additional skills that might be required to drive the program, are already paying off for us. So that's one thing. The second thing I would say is, I mentioned that Papua New Guinea is an FCS country, so it has various sort of challenges. And earlier this year, we also had some riots. So this interrupted our schedule a little bit in terms of our planned events, because it was difficult for people to move around the city to, come to workshops or trainings. So I'd say my tip is flexibility. Whilst you want to have a structured program, you need to build some flexibility into the program. One, to allow for unexpected things that come up. And two, also, for an opportunistic perspective, you might realise as you go that there's a new area, an emerging area that you want to provide training or development on, and you want to have the flexibility to insert that into the program. An example of that in our program is that we want to insert some work in terms of unconscious bias and male allies, and the role that men can play in gender equality. So that's been exciting. And the third tip and final tip I would say is around partnering for sustainability, right? We know our program has a fixed duration, but we have partnered on purpose with the PNG Business Coalition for Women, because we see that they'll be able to take this work forward with the companies themselves. They already provide capacity building and training on things like how to do a policy on sexual harassment in the workplace, for example. So they're really well placed to carry that forward. So it's a legacy we want to leave behind and ensure that they can help carry forward.
Super, super. Thank you, Ellen. Just to recap what you said, you mentioned that, these focal points that you work with are really, really smart people. And some of the tweaks in programs, in these programs like role playing and, leadership qualities, these kind of push them to go and take these action to their management, to their leadership. The second point that you mentioned was around, creating, did you say creating spaces for people to speak up? Can you repeat the second point again, please?
Around creating flexibility in the program, so that we have flexibility built in, so that we can change the design to allow for maybe things that happen unexpectedly. Like I mentioned.
So maybe extra budget, extra resources, extra time, just to buffer them in, so that, you are on track even when unexpected things, especially in contexts such as, fragile settings. And three, you mentioned which is, I think, really smart that you all did, is kind of working with the coalition, the Women's Business Coalition themselves, because even after this, they, can kind of take this programming and make it their own and, continue expanding them within their new members, existing members, and going deeper and providing the support needed. So, Ellen, thank you. I think all these insights that you shared were extremely, extremely important and insightful to learn more about what's happening in PNG, but also for other team leads who are designing similar programs. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.